Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dovecote. It is April 29th, 7:02 p.m., and you're watching episode 24 of the Dovecote. Uh, my guest today is Mariah from Table Talk. Say hi, Mariah.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hell yeah. So I have to be I guess I should probably give some context for this because I'm not I guess I'm not necessarily shy about this. So my friend uh the process by which you are on the show is really interesting, and I feel like I should
Uh-huh.
mention it. Um,
Yeah,
because also any chance to talk about the specific cause that it's connected to is worthwhile to me. So
absolutely.
can you were involved in a like Palestine charity, right?
We were. So it was during the month of January. I believe my brain is also quite fried today, but I'm like 90% sure it's January. And if it's not, my co-host Ollie can just whack me over the head when I see her this weekend. Um, for we were it was a big social campaign with like a lot of D&D and TTRPG creators and like podcast hosts. It was really, really cool. And we raised a pretty substantial amount of money for aid to Palestine, which was awesome. And part of that process was like we all kind of offered up little different incentives or things we could do. So it's like, oh, we could like paint people painted minis, like spotting on other people's shows, having people come on ours. Like there was all kinds of really cool stuff. People wrote one shots and like auctioned that off. And so it was kind of this like online TTRPG content raffle, which was really, really cool. And it got quite big. Like I figured it was gonna be big, but it took off a lot quicker than I thought it would, which was awesome to see.
Yeah. And my friend Yilsis Duckler was like, "Hey, Eclipse, do you want do you want Mariah from Table Talk on your show?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do." And
Like, Gib, yoink.
yeah, um, yeah. So I'd love to. I have to be honest. Like, there's so much TTRPG stuff out there. I have not
Oh
really
my goodness, yeah.
gotten much of a chance to watch a lot of uh, uh,
Mhm.
listen to a lot of table talk. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear kind of from your mouth, like what do you like? What is your pitch to folks for your show, and what makes it special?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, like, side note of there's so much content, and like when you have like so many of your friends are creators, I feel like I have live under a mound of unwatched content now.
Yeah,
It's just like the way of life. But so Table Talk is a TTRPG discussion podcast where we cover everything except actually rolling dice and playing D&D. I say live on the air. We're not live. It's a podcast that we record months in advance. I'm just my marketing brain is taking over.
it's okay.
So we bring on a lot of guests and talk to a lot of really cool creators about what they love most about TTRPGs. And there's episodes of just myself and my co-host Alejandra, who's like my best friend of several years, ranting for about 45 minutes to an hour about aspects of this lovely hobby that we're all obsessed with. And it really evolved. It started as like a joke that quickly didn't become a joke. It was just like, oh, like two best friends, we should start a podcast. And then we came up with the idea and we recorded a handful of episodes. And especially after we went to PAX last year, we really quickly started finding this little niche that we've carved out for ourselves of like being able to bring together all of these people that we've watched for years and these really people doing cool and interesting things in the gaming space and the TTRPG space. And we've got to learn so much about like different systems and get exposed to different things. And it's just been a jolly good time. And like, it's been described as being at like a coffee shop with your friends and just talking about D&D. And that was like the best review we could have ever gotten because that was what we were aiming for. Um it's a lot of there's a lot of chaos. It's not a strict format. We just kind of let the spirit move us go
Hell
through
yeah,
it, but it's a good time. I like it a lot.
hell yeah. I'm putting that putting your link in the Twitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really like it's kind of wild how many TRPG shows are out there, but it seems like y'all are doing some really cool stuff. Um, I guess if you had to kind of um, generalize, like what is your kind of area in terms of like games that you generally cover or talk about? Like what's kind of your region of of RPGs that you're focused in on?
So we have talked about kind of anything that we could get our hands on, wrangle people into coming on. Obviously, like Ale and I have the most experience, like IRL playing is with D&D. That's what introduced us to TTRPGs as a hobby. Um, I currently run a Vampire the Masquerade campaign for like Ale and our other two best friends. And I loved that system and that whole World of Darkness lore for years and years, and just finally kind of took the dive this year to start make my DM debut and start running it. And I'm very glad I did. So that's probably my second most experience. So we've played like Perils and Princesses with by Ryan Lynch. He also came on the show and discussed like his whole game design process, and he's awesome.
Cool.
We've played Overgrown. We've played Candela Obscura with Johnny from Talking XP.
Hmm.
Um, I am awful at listing things. As soon as anyone asks me to list
It's
things,
okay.
I will forget everything I've ever enjoyed in my life. So as I crane my neck to try to look over at my bookcase and see what else I have over there. I have a copy of Blades in the Dark that I really want to play.
Blades rules. I
I-
love Blades.
it's so cool. I'm foaming at the mouth to get my hands on the Magnus Archives TTRPG. I just got the cards for it. I'm super excited to play that. Uh, one of my best friends recently got like the Monster Hunter. She had backed the Kickstarter game, so she has that content now.
There's wait, is
So
there
we're
a
gonna play
Monster Hunter
that too.
TTRPG?
There is.
Huh. I did not. Oh wait, I'm trying to. Is there an? I'm looking.
It was a Kickstarter.
Okay, I'm seeing Monster
Um,
Hunter World, the board game. Is that
it's not that. It is
okay?
like a TTRPG.
Okay.
I could get the link from her and send it
Yeah,
to you
I'd love
after.
to look into that.
Um, but yeah, it has like crafting mechanics and it's really cool.
Sick.
Um, but yeah, as far as like what we have the most authority on, I would say definitely like D&D, and then for myself like VTM. But on anything we can get our grubby little hands on, we're very excited to do. And like we have both Ollie and I have like we would like to at some point do an actual play, and like I'm currently that's a few years off because like we would want to record it like live. So the setup for that we would oh,
Yeah, that's
that's a bit
tricky.
intensive because like our group we're great, but we're not good online solely. Like Ollie and I play some games online, but that magic of that group, we have to be at a table staring at each other. So that's going to take some setup, but eventually that we want to do that. And then like I'm currently working on writing out like a narrative horror podcast that will we'll get voice acted and everything, and I'm very excited about that, and to like build on the like growth we've seen with table talk, and branch out into more of storytelling genres. And then like I love most about table talk, I think, is that it's become this like ever flowing well of new and interesting content that's really keeps us dialed in to like everything that's going on in the industry, and that's just been so interesting and cool to have.
Neat. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, it seems like like I'm personally very used to like Twitter and Tumblr for TTRPG stuff, but like you're over in like
Hmm.
Threads, Instagram, and TikTok, which I've heard some TikTok success. Like I know One More Multiverse has had
Yeah.
a lot of success over
Hmm.
there, um, but that's really cool. I'm like looking at this and like maybe I should also be ranching out, but yeah,
It's
that's
it's
awesome.
rough. The like my co-host Ale handles the bulk of the socials for Table Talk, and like I just got the socials for like our larger production company is called like Mythos Media.
Hmm.
So I just like got our logo redesigned, and got those handles made, and I need to start posting on those, and it's brutal out here. Like it's hard. Like I love social media. It's great and it's fun, but especially TikTok is can be very labor intensive and like emotionally taxing and mentally taxing to like create content on a steady flow. So like I feel like I go through points where I'm just like so inspired and I'm in the trenches and I'm like, no, I'm gonna make 8 million things. And then I get out of that and I'm like, I was just hyperfixated
Yeah,
and
and
now I have nothing.
I I've gotten the vibe from people like um people I've asked people who like make games like I'm like I'm a game designer and so are a lot of my friends, and I've asked like, hey,
Oh,
are you
oh.
doing stuff on TikTok? And they're like, I did stuff on TikTok and then
Hmm.
it was soul crushing. um,
Yeah. Well, I also feel like during I had a little stint where like I was in uh a group for a little bit. Ollie got me into it called like the Ocean's Pride. It was like a big TTRPG like role play server and had a pretty big presence on TikTok. And I made like a few little videos for that and stuff. And they were fun, but just like the way that I would have had to like batch record content, everything while
hmm.
working and stuff. And I think there was a bit during like the height of quarantine where like everybody had a little more free time than they knew what to do with. And I feel like TikTok was a great place to dump that. And we had similar success with Threads. And I would say Threads is probably the most like old school OG Tumblr, just like place to hang out and be weird. Or like I never got into Twitter, but people who like Twitter, I'm aware it's called X now. I shouldn't dead name the
No,
app.
you should absolutely should call it
Okay,
Twitter.
can I dead name the app? We've
Yeah,
joked on several platforms like that is the only dead naming that is acceptable
yes, I
is
agree.
calling. I just sort of morally refuse to call Twitter X. I don't know why. I drove that stake in the sand and I'm standing by it, but for some reason I am.
Well, because
Um,
it's a silly name. It's like,
it
and
is.
also
It's dumb.
on a user interface, it looks like it's gonna close the inter like it looks like it's gonna close something because it's
Yeah,
an
it's
X.
terrible UI. It's terrible UI.
Yeah,
It's absolutely terrible. Um, that ran aside.
yeah,
Uh, Threads, like, yeah, Threads is like a very fun little community that we had we've got some good traction on. And like if you were gonna explore any of them, I would say play around with Threads, especially if you are like a Tumblr like fun. If Twitter was ever fun for you, or you're a Tumblr homie, because like I was a Tumblr homie back in the day. Um, it has the closest vibe to that. But also, like, what if the government takes TikTok away from us? And if I go and
right.
film a bunch of TikToks and the U.S. government I will riot in the streets for the
Yeah,
wrong reasons. But I was like, I was like, I'm not gonna swear or overly rant about the government, but Lord, I can't. I have to see how that goes.
yeah, that
All
that
that
is
to
true.
say, I also really need to start posting our Mythos media handles because there's nothing on them and they haunt me day and night. So I understand the struggle.
Yeah, that's tough. Having multiple like kind of different venues that you're doing stuff through or avenues is challenging for sure. Um,
Yeah, which like it makes sense from a business perspective of like, so I'm thinking like Ollie's the only friend I feel like I ever could have had a business with because we think the same way in a lot of things and we very much have always run Table Talk and Mythos, like which is what our larger sort of LLC is under, as a business first, which has been nice. Um, but yeah, like it is important to like have some kind of presence there, and I want to like create content as I'm writing this like horror podcast out about like that whole documenting that whole experience because I think that would be fun and interesting and like that's something I would watch as a writer. I just got to make myself do it.
yeah.
Like make the brainworms do the thing.
Goblin says having more than one social media is like ripping off warts with a claw hammer. Yeah, yeah.
It's rough. Yeah,
Posting is
maybe
an
I just need
unnatural
to
act.
maybe I just need to start with one. Maybe we can both commit to getting on Threads
Yeah,
and just
maybe.
doing Threads.
I don't
And we
know
can be
how
accountability.
does Threads like what are the numbers like on Threads?
What do you mean when you say what are the numbers like?
Like, I mean, I guess like engage like are people on threads? Are people using it?
Yeah, oh, for
Okay.
sure.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah, I definitely feel like people are, especially after, like, you know, Elon out in Twitter space. I feel like a lot of people were like, "Hey, Imma head out," and Threads was just where they went.
hmm.
But it does still, at least the part of Threads that I'm on, I feel like with any social media, there's some wild and wacky and kind of scary areas you can get into. I just try to avoid those for my mental health. But where we're at with Threads of like I'm in, the TTRPG community, like the book talk girlies and like all of that. Like it's a very kind of welcoming, like nice space
Hmm.
that I found. It has that very much like that Tumblr community feel to me.
Yeah, uh I definitely I'm like so cautious with that with kind of hopping into any sort of online community that I'm not necessarily already familiar with because like trans woman stuff like
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Oh,
anxiety there, but
absolutely.
I may
People
give
are
it a look.
absolutely insane.
It seems
Yeah.
I've
I
not heard
think
bad things about Threads, I suppose.
I think you'd like it if you've been debating given one the old
Hmm.
college try. I think Threads would be a pretty like nice place to start because you can just get on there and say random stuff and send it into the ether. And there will people that relate to it. Like it doesn't have to be a full production, like you do. Like
Yeah.
which I guess it doesn't on TikTok or Instagram either, but like I have that type of brain where I'm like, it must be perfect or it's not even worth doing. So it's like, if it's not studio lit and the image isn't taken with like my good camera, then like, why even post it, right? Which is my problem that I'm working on. But like, Threads doesn't feel as much like that. You can show up a lot more authentically. I feel like, and it's fine.
Neat.
And if people are crazy, use that block button. I'm a big fan
Oh
of
yeah,
blocking
you
people.
gotta block. You gotta block early and often. Like
Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
no qualms with that. Um, but yeah, I'd love to kind of move on to talking about games. I'd love to hear I guess what have you been playing lately, if
Games
anything.
and games in general or
Generally
just video.
tabletop, but listen, like I've had people talk about 1940s classic movies they've been watching recently, so don't feel
Incredible.
too restricted on that front. But yeah, I guess
Um,
focusing on tabletop role playing games.
tabletop role playing games, obviously, like, so I'm currently in anyone who listens to Table Talk will know our Strixhaven game that Alejandra runs that myself and our best friends Bex and Alyssa play in. That is like one of the great lights of my life right now, and it's a ton of fun. It's a Strixhaven game by the skin of its teeth, in the sense of like we're using the school administration mechanics. Because why make those up if you don't have to? And then everything else, we've sort of just chucked the book into the sea and we're rolling with it.
Hmm.
And it's great, great fun because like everybody had really dynamic backstories and stuff, and then all I was sitting there is like, this is more interesting than what's in the book, so we're just gonna go with that. So that's great fun. We have another campaign that the four of us and and then another girl, Chrissy, play in that's run by our DM Teddy. It's kind of like an eldritch horror, like somewhat westerny campaign that's like very much like more combat focused, and it's like Teddy is out to get us and he has no qualms about it, and he's like, listen, I'm trying to kill y'all in the streets, and if I can get you I will, so come ready. And that's fun because like those aren't the types of games I would ever want to run.
Hmm.
So but it is nice to have that outlet to like I play a Way of the Long Death monk, so I just get to go in and do buku damage, and it's very fun um, to mess up his well laid plans. And then I currently run, like I said earlier, my VTM campaign, which similar to Ollie's Strixhaven campaign, it started out as I purchased the Fall of London book, and I was like, cool, this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna make it easy for myself. There's a nice module here. This is a great story. And then I went to my players and I was like, "Hey, everyone, give me like what kind of characters do you want to play? Like, give me your backstories." Forgetting that you probably should have just made them. There were characters that if you're gonna follow the module, you kind of gotta people gotta play certain people. I didn't
Hmm.
do that, so I had the same thing where like everyone handed me very interesting stuff, and then I was sitting trying to just have any sort of plot scaffolding at all, and I sat down to run the first session, having done no prep, and I've somehow become a DM that doesn't prep at all, and I just sit down with vibes and audacity and hope for the best, and apparently it works. The first time I did it, it was awful for my imposter syndrome, and I thought I was like, "There's no way anyone's enjoying this. Like they all must be having a terrible time. I don't look like I know what I'm doing," because it was the first time I'd ever run anything,
Hmm.
and it was a all the characters had to go to like it's a Camarilla campaign. It's Fall of London by the skin of its teeth, right? I really just want like court drama and like gay shenanigans, and then we'll bring in like the Inquisition threat after I have my fun with that, and I milk that for all it's worth. So we're not that book has gone out the window as well. Aside from like I'm using some pre-made stat blocks that have been given to me by World of Darkness. It's a great book. At some point, I need to actually just run the modules. It just won't be this campaign. So
Yeah,
we'll
that
see.
makes sense. I actually so I've played a little bit of World of Darkness. I think I played a little bit of Changeling as a play-by-post at one point. Um,
Mm,
but I've not gotten around to Vampire. I
I
really
love it.
like the vibe of World of Darkness. It seems great. I
It's very yeah. Go ahead.
used to play a lot of D&D 5e and then kind of
Hmm.
slowed down on it. I just got very well. I think my taste changed quite a bit. I think
Makes sense.
I saw a lot of games that did the things that I wanted D&D to do, um,
Mm-hmm.
like better, and I've mostly been playing those these days, and I feel pretty happy about that. But I also listen like uh, there is a what's the fucking uh like there is a there is space for all sorts of tables in my opinion,
Oh, absolutely,
and I think
absolutely.
that's wonderful. um
Yeah, that's something we talk about a lot of. It's like there's no, I mean, within reason. Like there aren't like there's not really a right or a wrong way to play TTRPGs, and that's what makes them so great, right? Is like you can create this custom like cultivated experience for the people that are at your table, but you have to find the right table. And it's like all the tables you play at aren't going to be right for you. And like some of them might be good enough and still fun, but it's like everything is not going to magically click, right? The same way it's like making friends or dating or like finding a therapist or like anything else in life. It's like it's compatibility. And you just have to find the table and the environment that matches the style of play you like. Like my games, I don't want to do a lot of math. So I play a game where it's like VTM is almost all, at least how I run it. You can run it more combat heavy and crunchy, but I run it very like mechanics light, and I come up with the rolls on the fly. It's basically us just improving for 6 hours at a time. And that's what I want to do. Like that's what I'm here for. And it's like I like my story driven stories. I like my very theatrical settings and my spooky little horror moments, and like those like that's what I like to run. It's also what I primarily like to play, but I also will get down with like some crunchy combat every now and then. It's just I can't do that for as long as I can just like role play and interact with someone, because my brain will just start getting fried from all like the counting and the tracking, and I'm like, okay, I can't remember anything else anymore. Like I can we've had eight we had in the longest session we ever played in Strixhaven was like with breaks, but gameplay an 18-hour session,
Oh my, that's so long. I
which is
cannot.
insane.
I only do like
It's
3 hour sessions these days. That's wild.
yeah, it's absolutely bananas. We have a problem, but we all have the same problem, and the four of us play together, so it's fine. Like our average sessions, I think are probably about like 6 to 8.
Hmm.
I surprised myself because like the last VTM session I ran was like 6 hours. We probably took a break around hour like 3.5 or 4. And then I ran it for like, yeah, a little over 6. And I did not think I could last that long, but I just was rolling with it. And my players are very good about also having little moments where they're role playing amongst themselves. So I just get to sit back and like watch my little telenovela that's just for me. And then I remember that I have to run the world, and I'm like, okay, let me hop back in, and like run this person or tell you to like roll something. But yeah, I surprised myself that I was able to run the game for that long. But it is nice to like settle in a little bit and just be more comfortable in that DM chair. But yeah, like
Yeah.
it's that 18-hour session was the arc finale for my character. It was like her arc was first. So it was a time. Ollie made me cry a couple times. It was the best session of D&D I've ever played.
Yeah,
And I think
sorry.
no, you're good. It's just like I think that will be a hard one to top, because we just put so much work and care into that character, and it played out so beautifully, and it was so good.
That's wonderful.
But it was very long. We were like crying at 5 in the morning, and then we had to turn around and play our next campaign
Yeah.
the next day. So we were just like at our friend Teddy's to play their campaign like half awake, just like being like, "How can you insert caffeine into my veins right now?" Because we slept for 2 hours.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because like I remember when I ran a lot of D&D and it was like, you know, 6, like 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 hour sessions. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, partially because of the needs of combat where you have like you know, grid
Yeah.
combat and all that stuff. Um, and then, you know, moving into other stuff, even when I'm playing like a grid heavy OSR game, I'm usually only doing like 3, sometimes 4. I know people who are like, yeah, I had Will Jobst who made this Discord has ghosts in it on the show a couple weeks ago, and Will said that
Mhm.
uh, the ideal session for him is 90 minutes, which is like so
Fair.
short.
That's
But
quite
like,
short.
you know, I guess for
Like,
the types of
yeah.
games that you know that he plays, it's you know it's pretty reasonable.
But yeah, also like if he's playing during the week too, like we dedicate a weekend a month, because like right
Hmm.
now half of our party lives in Houston, and half of us, myself and my friend Bex, are out in Austin. Like we're both
Hmm.
planning to move back to the Houston area at some point like later in this year. But so we have like a once a month pilgrimage where we dedicate a weekend specifically to our Houston D&D games. So that's how we can play these like long marathon sessions, because they are on weekends. But like when I've played games in the past where we played on weeknights because they were online, and I'm like, my stamina's not. I don't have 6 hours
Hmm.
in me on a Tuesday night. Like, I'm like, I'm an adult. I have to go to work in the morning. Like, I have a stand up meeting at 8 a.m. Like, I got to go to bed. So I do get it, depending on like when you're playing and the circumstance and everything. Sometimes it is like, hey, we can be in and out in 90 minutes and just trying to feel something. Like, it can work.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any games that are like coming out or that you've kickstarted or any of that stuff that you're excited about?
The Magnus Archives role playing game is the big one for me.
Oh, interesting.
I'm obsessed with that podcast. I've listened to it in its entirety more than once. Probably like I've done 2 full listen throughs, and then I'm listening to the Magnus Protocol now. I kind of credit Magnus with getting me into horror in
Hmm.
general, and it's been a big, just like their sound design is beautiful and subtle, but works so well, and the way the story's woven together and all the little like plot hooks and hints and clues that are buried in there. I was like, it's just so well done. And now that I am kind of trying to step behind the desk and write a horror podcast of my own, like it's just I love it even more. And so yeah, the second I get my hands on that book, it's game over for everyone in my life. Like you're being held hostage until I exercise this demon,
Hell yeah.
because it's like I need it. It's like myself and then my friend Oak. We are both obsessed with it, and, like, our other friends, like it, like, Ollie enjoys it, but she's not finished it, and I don't think she's prepared for how Oak and I are gonna be when we get that.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends. Or I have a couple friends who are definitely like Magnus heads. It's interesting to see that
Mhm.
this is a Monty Cook cipher type project. That's a
Yeah.
cool. I feel like that's a cool approach for a
Mhm.
for a game in this genre. It's neat.
Yeah. I've never played a Cypher System game before, so I need to educate myself on that a little bit before, or, like, take a little bit of time to familiarize myself with that
I
before
know
I
very
kinda
little.
just yeah. But for what I've seen, it seems quite cool. It's one of those things of like if you can figure out D&D, like the good thing about like starting, which like I should say, all my experience with D&D has been 5e. I've
Mhm.
never played anything older. Like I've been in the hobby for probably about 5 years, but like I knew of D&D growing up, but I didn't really play it, so I don't have exposure to the older um gens. But it is a thing of like if you can teach yourself D&D with all those modifiers and all the different dice, I feel like you can. It makes picking up other systems easier because it's almost always fewer dice and fewer things to track. Not always, but like it's not as like often not as front loaded as heavily as D&D is. Which
Yeah.
like I love D&D. It'll always have a special place in my heart. But how you said of like getting those exposures, getting exposure to other systems, that's really fun.
Yeah, I found that the um like this is just kind of how I experienced it. Like I played a lot of D&D, and then I was like, wow, I love D&D. And then eventually
Mhm.
um I moved over to like Fellowship and a lot of like PBTA type games. And I think the thing that I identified really quickly was like, oh hey, the thing that I really like about the things that I like about D&D, like interesting character traits and stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
these games are doing that, like way more sharply because they have a lot less stuff in the way. It's a lot less like +1 on X on this saving throw, or
Mhm.
you get your proficiency on this skill, and more like, uh, you know, you have wings and you're able to do this thing, or you know, uh, you have a weird sack on your back that produces a special wax that you can explode, or
Mhm.
like I'm really into more fictionally focused, or like fiction oriented games, I guess. And I think that like
Yeah.
I think D&D was a really good starting place for me.
Mhm.
But I think that I think I would generally encourage folks to explore games maybe outside of their comfort zone, or what they assume their comfort zone is, because there's a lot to see out there.
Oh, absolutely. What is your favorite TTRPG and why is it your favorite?
Oh, that's tricky.
I'm curious. You can pick multiple. Like I'm the person if someone's like, "What book do you like?" I'll name 5. Like I'm not going to make you pick a favorite child, but like your top ones.
I need to bring in my interview bird. I forgot about the birds. This often happens.
What?
That's Intrero, the
They're
interview
so
bird.
cute.
Yeah, she's cute. Okay, favorite RPGs. I feel like the one that comes to mind immediately is a Powered by the Apocalypse game called Fellowship, um, which is a
Mm.
fantasy RPG where one person, or the GM, plays the Overlord, as well as like the
Mhm.
traditional GM role, where they are kind of your like Sauron type character, um,
Mhm.
and everyone else is playing a a like member representing like a certain people. So you have like elves or dwarves, or robots or
Ooh.
dragons, but each of the players has like complete control over the lore of their people, um, as they play the game, um, and like I really like how it kind of takes a lot of those assumptions that you make in tabletop role playing games about like this is what the GM does, this is what the player does, and kind of flips them, where it's like now the GM is in some cases playing a limited character with certain abilities, and now the players are, uh, you know, taking have this control over the world. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's a really great game. It's also just like a very well written and designed like adventure game, and I think it's really great. Um,
That's really cool. I was just opening up a tab to find it because I have like a little running list in my phone of like good ones that, especially like little indie games
Hell
that
yeah.
I'll always write them down because I'll forget them the second I stop talking to someone. But it almost is like you explaining it. That's really cool because like I do a lot of sort of like online like written role play, like
Mm,
usually for either like for D&D characters or campaigns to like flesh out backstory and everything. But I'm in like a bigger server with like Ale and our friend Oak and Kay, who actually edits for Ale and I, um, for Table Talk. She's amazing. They're both amazing. Um, and so like there's one for the city that our Strixhaven campaign is set in. And, like I didn't RP in that one because it was done a few years ago. But like they all play different, like the different heads of the state or the council or everything, and like built out the
mm.
world that way. And that seems really similar to, yeah, like some of our OSRP stuff that we do. And that is really, really interesting and cool to me. I want to try that now. That seems
Yeah,
like that would be very up our street.
play by post and like that sort of thing is very much I mean, I know this isn't necessarily the point, but like I do think play by post and that sort of like written style is a really good way to experiment with RPGs and write settings, and
Hmm.
like I think it's a really cool uh kind of underspoken element of that. um I'll try to give you one more just so I can give you something that's a bit uh because I think that's a game that's in some ways somewhat close to D&D, and I kind of wanted to see if I can give you something that's further off the edge. Um,
Something a little weirder,
yeah, I
a little
would.
fun and funky.
Do I wanna? Hmm.
Yes.
I
Say it a
really like.
controversial thing.
This isn't really even a controversial one. I'm just like, this is a very well known game in my circles, but I don't know if it's gotten
Gotcha.
much. Yuzeba's Bed and Breakfast by Jay Dragon. Um,
I've never heard of. Can you spell that
okay.
for me really quick so I can Google it?
Yes. It is here. Yuzeba's Bed and Breakfast. So you're gonna want to look at the One More Multiverse version. So it is a actually there's I'm trying to think, is physical out yet? I don't know. Um, Yuzeba's Bed and
Um,
Breakfast is a game about a bed and breakfast in the woods where it is always September 15th, and the strange inhabitants that fill it. Um, it has some of the most interesting mechanics I think I've ever seen in a game. It has like unlockable characters, unlockable chapters. It has a you get a red envelope when you buy it that if you
oh,
open, bad things happen permanently. Um,
and
it's
it's a TTRPG?
yeah, it's a TTRPG. It's wonderful. Um,
This is like gay Stardew vibes. Oh my god, this is the cutest thing. I need this.
yeah, it's also got a
I need no more context.
it's got a really fun dark side too, which I think is really fun to learn and explore. But not in a like you know, it's not your kind of like classic like video game like, oh, there's a secret, you know, it's nice Animal Crossing, but there's an axe murder. It's more just like there's a weird floating pillar, and like uh the witch who owns the titular Yuzeba is like a very strange
Hmm.
character with a storied history involving like demons and kings and all sorts of other fun stuff. But yeah, I really recommend it. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, Yuzeba does have "I murdered my husband" and got this like really fabulous purple fur cloak with the insurance money, and I love that for I trust her
Yeah,
implicitly.
I love her. I love Parrish, the knight who got turned into a frog. I love Gertrude, who's a recently transitioned trans woman who wears a mask because she doesn't want anyone to see her. Um,
Incredible.
it's very and it's got a lot of like really wonderful like fat trans people in it, and I think it's
Hell yeah,
fantastic.
as we should.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, those would be my big recommendations.
Incredible. I will definitely send both of these to Ale and
Hell
look into
yeah,
checking them out at some point because that looks so incredibly cute.
cool. Okay, how about we try and how do we want to do this? Let's hit on one of our stories, then we'll go on to break, if that's all right.
Yeah, we could segue into the stew pot stuff since we kind of
Oh,
Uzeba's is
yeah,
kind of a cute cottagecore one. I was like
true.
we could sashay on over to that.
I
Or if
do.
you want to save that one for last because that is like the juicier topic that I feel like we have more to say on, we can save that from for after break too.
Let's hit Stew Pod. I think that's an interesting one. Um,
Okay.
I do also think that uh, so the person who made Yuzeva's is my friend Jay, or the person who led its design, who runs Possum Creek Games. Uh, I do think that I do think that Jay would shoot me if Jay learned that I let someone call Yuzeva's cottagecore on my show. So um um
Oh no, sorry.
I'm sorry, Jay, but Mariah is right. It is cottagecore. I'm
I
not.
mean,
I'm
I
standing
meant
by
it
your
as a comp.
opinion.
I meant it as a compliment.
It
That's just the
is,
vibe
yeah.
I got.
It's very pastoral and nice. Yeah. Okay. Uh, I'm gonna fly the newsbird Cordus in here, who's coming from a just a just a patch of ice, just a
Sort of
beautiful glacier. Because
incredible.
we
I
need
love
some
that.
cold air in this room right now. I am sweating my ass off. Okay. So the first story, we only have two this week because it's been a quiet 2 weeks because I was supposed to have someone else last week and I wound up skipping because they were not available. Um,
Mhm.
so let me move you a little bit because I think I moved some stuff around. Um, first of all, Stew Pot, Tales from a Fantasy Tavern, is on BackerKit, which is really interesting. I kind of had to like uh, I think folks actually saw this the other week. I was like, wait a second, I've played this before. I This was one of
Mhm.
the first indie RPGs that I played ever, and I was
Wild.
like, isn't this out? And then I looked on
It's like I'm
itch.
being gaslit by backer kit right now.
Yeah, I went to look on itch.io. Let me actually just do that, and I was like, oh, you can't buy this anymore. And I was really
Mm.
confused. But then I was like, oh, it's on BackerKit now. So
Mhm.
basically, what they did, and I think this is really interesting. I think it's a really like unique way of releasing and uh like structuring a release. They so like this game was out on itch for years as like a pretty layout light um RPG. Stew Pot, for those who don't know, is a game where you are adventurers coming after the end of a campaign to basically run a tavern. It's great if you like have a fantasy campaign that ended and you want to like uh, tell an additional story that kind of wraps things up. It's great. Or you can play it on your own. I've played it on its own, um, and it, I, so that they released on itch, specifically Takuma Okada, who's a wonderful designer. Actually, I need to follow Takuma. There we go. Uh, and
Right.
then it went down. I don't know when exactly, but you know, you used to be able to download it for $15.
Mhm.
Looks like was it really 12 days ago? Yeah, literally, or maybe it was before that. I don't know when they. Hmm.
When the backer kit went up?
Yeah,
Like, did the backer kit just recently go up, or has it been up for a minute?
it's
If you don't know, it's fine.
looks like it went up 12 days ago. So the what would that be? Um,
They
17th.
did they did the switcheroo like at the same time.
I would guess so, but maybe it was before. I actually don't know because there was a
Okay.
long period where Evil Hat just had like Stew Pot, coming to crowdfunding soon. Um,
Right.
so presumably Takuma got an Evil Hat deal, and then I should really have Takuma on at some point to ask about this. But
That would be cool.
yeah, and then Stew Pot is now on BackerKit, looking like extremely fancy. They got gifts. All this art is
It
like
looks super
amazing.
cute. Yeah, the art's great. I watched the little video. It was like, this is the cutest thing that ever was.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I'm oh god, it's really loud. um,
Yeah, you're good.
so I'm kind of two minds with this because like
Mhm.
on the one hand I want indie TTRPG creators to get that dosh
Oh,
fundamentally like
totally. Yes.
uh and like I'm glad that this is the best way for them to like if this is the best way for them to do it, I'm glad that they're doing it this way. Um
Hmm.
but I do also have like I guess uh like I think the ethics here are kind of blurry
Yeah.
because or maybe not ethics. I feel like ethics is maybe a bit of a harsh word, but like it does the archival element of this is a little tricky because like you know
No,
we
I
love
mean it is an ethics question. I mean, it
yeah
doesn't always mean like we can discuss ethics also. I mean, I'm a legal nerd, so I
yeah
can
fair
go. I'll wade in this trench with you all day. But I mean, like it doesn't mean just because you're having a conversation around the ethics of something doesn't necessarily mean that like what someone did is unethical. It's just it's interesting to talk about, right? And like where because there's not a clear script for this.
yeah
Um.
it's just it was really interesting to me to be like this game that I think about as like foundational was not
Mhm.
available for years and I did not know about it. Like that's pretty wild.
Mm.
Um like this is a game that like, you know, people would be like, "Hey, what are some great RPGs?" and I'd be like, "Yeah, Stew Pot." And I could have been telling
Right.
people to get a game that did not exist in a purchasable form. And you know, with the
Right.
trove gone with like, you know, no real way to pirate games now,
Mhm.
uh it is it is interesting. I hope this does really well. You know, despite that, I guess.
Same.
But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this.
Yeah, I was like, I love that you suggested this as a topic because it's ethical stuff is always very, very interesting to me inherently. Um, and especially with this being someone who like my co-hosts and I ultimately like do would like at some point this to be our jobs. We would like to work full time in the TTRPG space, and it's like there are a lot of considerations, things of like, well, how do you do that in a way that's ethical? Or even though things like with Patreon, it's like, how do you make sure you're providing enough benefit where it doesn't just feel like you're taking people's money for no reason, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, are there discussion points there around like, well, adults are adults, and if people want to support you and give you money, then that's an informed choice they're making, and it's not your place or your right to like say that they shouldn't do that, of course. But also like you want to be, I think it's a good thing to think about in terms of like, are we doing this in a way where it's a fair exchange, and are we just trying to in this very capitalistic society we're in conduct ourselves in a way that like we can be proud of and we can like sleep at night and not be haunted. um
Mhm.
and in general with things like this, like I immediately thought of like the whole like fan fiction world, and there's the recent big one for me that affected me personally was the news came out that seeing oh god seeing you I might be absolutely butchering that pronunciation. If I am, I apologize. Who wrote Manacled, is which was like Harry Potter, like Hermione, Draco and Hermione fan fiction. For those who do not know, who are not entrenched in that, which like there is no, I don't engage with any official Harry Potter anything anymore for
Yeah.
incredibly obvious reasons. Because dear God, why? But like the fan fiction space and stuff is where like people have kind of just taken those characters and like you can't play right with these, so they're ours now.
Mhm.
And it has grown to a level where it's like it's we're like they're using that original material as like scaffolding for the world, basically. And to that point of
Oh shit.
she's gonna
Sorry.
take you're good. She's gonna take the story that she wrote and like publish it as a book and like change the setting, change like not use any of the original like Harry Potter IP. Um, which I'm very excited about, and like I will absolutely be one of the first people to buy that book because I love that story. Um, but it also was a thing of like I did go and download the original version, right? Just so I had it before it got taken off of AO3. And
Hmm.
so there's something similar about that too, where like I don't have a clear answer for like what is right or what is ethical, because I agree that like I want more indie creators and game designers and stuff to get their due, to get recognized. I think it's really great that these bigger organizations and like publishing houses are picking up these indie games, and like people are getting attention for the work that they've been doing for years and years, and are getting put on a bigger platform where they can get some return on all of that time and effort that they've put into it. Uh like yeah, I don't know. It is interesting where it's like I wonder like, oh, is there a middle ground where you keep some kind of, like you said, like the original game was pretty like rules light. You keep some kind of like one pager version of it, right, available on like itch, and then you go and you do the big production of the book with the art, and you add new mechanics, and you make that whole like V2 version of it that's big and fancy and beautiful, and like that's what you sell. But also, like, I don't know if that would be allowed, right? If you have a deal with a bigger publishing company, it may be part. Like, I've never gone through that process, so that may be something where they're like, "Hey, you can't undercut this financially," and like that would also make sense. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, and it's something like that. I think about a lot. Where like the line between like passion projects and hobbies, and then like it being a
God, it's a lot of
business
money.
is.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess the part of this that's interesting to me is like, Takuma, get that money. Um,
Incredible, yeah.
but I'm really curious about Evil Hat because like I've never heard. I guess I've never heard of this situation happening with Evil Hat before specifically. Like, I
Mm.
don't know if there are any other projects that like existed and then Evil Hat bought, or existed on itch and then Evil Hat bought, and like I'm curious why that policy is in place. If that is a policy, I'm curious if that was specific to this. Like, I really want to know fundamentally. Like, I'd
Yeah,
really like to
it
know
would
what's up with
be.
this.
Mhm. It would be a really interesting thing to like hear from the source, because like on some level like we are making pretty broad assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, it could be a thing where that was part of the deal that was mandated, and they had to take the content down that was available on itch, and that was part of the thing. And so it's like, okay, like I get that. I can't fault anyone for that. Um, but it's like if it's that, or if they chose to take it down when they were trying to sort of generate, or like were they looking to have it published like or have it picked up by a bigger publishing house, or a bigger game development house, and like shopping that around and took it off as a way to like sort of make it more appealing, or like I don't know. It's really interesting. And I like, without knowing that, of like I can't, like I don't
Yeah.
think that it's necessarily wrong, but I
No.
do also get the thing where it's like, oh yeah, that is a little awkward where you're like, oh, you can't get this anymore, especially because these things don't happen overnight, right? Like it takes time to build a game and to get things approved, and to do especially like art
Yeah.
at that level and promotion at that
They
level,
got a
like
Roll 20
that take
module. Like,
oh real
they're
that
going
like yeah,
hard.
like
Yeah.
that takes time, that takes money, that takes negotiation, especially when you bring in things like Roll20, or like that's two corporate teams negotiating with each other over rights and stuff. Like all of that takes time, and so it's not going to be an overnight process. I
But they
think the
got some
ideal
sick
for
folks
me,
in here.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you're totally good. Yeah, that's super cool. Like the ideal, I think, like most utopian process would be like, yeah, you keep like a very pared down version of,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, here's what you need to play this game. Here's the one pager for it, right? And you like throw that out into the ether, and then it's like, hey, we're going big with this one, kids. And then you take everything else down, and you bring it back bigger than better, bigger than
Yeah.
ever.
I will say, like,
But there's
it's. Oh, sorry.
no good. That was just saying, like, there's still something that
Mhm.
people could use, but like again, like that may not be allowed, and if it isn't, like I can't fault anybody for not getting themselves in like legal copyright hot water with like a
Yeah.
much more powerful organization.
It does seem like they've done a pretty good job in terms of like just availability. Like you can immediately
Mm-hmm.
if you back, you get the backer preview PDF. The itch version, I
Oh,
believe
that's
you
nice.
get it anyway. Like if you had the itch version after the campaign is over, you'll just get it back. So like it's not too much of a
Mm-hmm.
it is the itch version was made temporarily unavailable, which I think is it's not the end of the world, but just something.
No.
Yeah.
I do really love that like when you back it, you get like a PDF version of it. I think
Mhm.
that is really smart and it is like that type of compromise that makes sense for me because it's like it is a way to still access that content. It's just on a different platform. I wish there's a way of like, yeah, to like advertise that or like I don't know, like Itch would probably not want people to be like, hey, come over to BackerKit and see my stuff. But like, you wish there was a way, which I'm sure there is if you follow this creator, if you follow like their platforms and stuff, I'm sure they've communicated this. Uh, but just like make people who may not be aware of what's happening. But you could also probably just Google the game and it would come up.
Yeah, I mean, you can say pretty much
Like
whatever you want on itch, to be fair.
fair enough.
But yeah, I
Um,
it's definitely interesting.
mhm. Yeah, I like having some kind of like little like a version of it immediately available and it's like, hey, we'll have the big pretty version, but like if all you want or can get is the PDF, like you can do that. Or if you want to go like whole hog and just have everything stew pot and make stew pot your personality, we will get that to you when it's done. But here's a PDF if you want to play it in the meantime. I think that's a really great
Oh,
middle ground strike.
they have this sample version on drive through. This is a very this is
That's
a
pretty common. Yeah.
it's just kind of like I mean this in the best way possible, kind of a shambolic like
It's a little helter skelter. Yeah.
yeah, like it is this is a very unique fundraising scheme, I guess, for a very unique game, and I hope it goes well. It seems like it's done like 125,000 is nothing to sneeze at for an indie
No,
game.
certainly not.
So
No.
congratulations, Takuma and Evil Hat.
Heck
Smiles.
yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we're gonna take. How do you feel about Tekken 5?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. We'll be back at '05 and see you all then.
Bye.
Hello, we are back, and we have our next story. Now, this happened, well, like 2 weeks ago, but it's fine. It's still notable. Um,
Yeah.
so, according to a filing from Hasbro, Cynthia Williams, the president of Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro Gaming, is resigning after 2 years. Her successor is not yet announced, and uh, uh, Rascals reached out for comment regarding what that might mean. Um, and then Wizards of the Coast responded with, "We're excited for Cynthia to take the next step in her career and grateful for the contributions she has made in her more than 2 years at Wizards and Hasbro. Wish her the absolute best in her next endeavor. We've started the
Hmm.
search for our next president of Wizards of the Coast and hope to have a successor in place soon." Um, and
Yeah.
it's the filing, which is, just basically the
Very
same.
boilerplate. Yeah.
Very simple. Um, really interesting. um, I
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot to really kind of sift through here in terms of like the last couple years of D&D and Hasbro,
Yes.
which I'm kind of curious to see. You got like it's tough because you have Magic and D&D, and they kind of interact in weird ways. Like, um,
Hmm.
Magic, obviously, like my understanding is they're doing fairly well, but also, they are kind of moving into like the crossover type stuff, which I don't know how well that's doing. And then D&D, you have like Baldur's Gate 3, which did really, really well, but then you have
Yeah.
Larian saying that they're not going to work on like a fourth game, and then you have,
Hmm.
Wizard of the Coast to be like, okay, who are we going to have to do that fourth one? Because we really need to have someone. We really need to, continue the hype on that. Um,
Yeah, I kind of love Laren being like, we worked really hard to make a thing, and we're not just gonna sell out and like be forced to do it again.
it's good. I hope that Larian. I wish Larian all the best. I quite like their
Yeah, they're
games.
dope. Yeah, same.
Um,
They're great. They're a great studio.
but yeah, I'm curious if this was, this is obviously speculation. Like I'm curious if those are
Wildly, yeah.
related to things that were happening at the company, or if it's just like, oh yeah, this is just a different point in this person's life. You know,
I feel like it has to be because I mean, like again, like yes, general and obvious disclaimer of like we are wildly speculating and gossiping about this, which is okay. But like 2 years in a C-suite role is very very short.
Mhm.
That's a that's an alarmingly quick turnaround for me, especially for like I work in tech, and that's a quick turnaround in tech at the C-suite level. Like if you bring someone in at that level to manage a company and then you are replacing them 2 years later, something happened. Like, and then adding the concept, like the context, sorry, of, like OGL Gate and like
Mhm.
everything that happened with like people really like, which was very cool to see. Like other games, like Pathfinder's reaction to that will never not be iconic and funny to me.
Yeah,
I think they
it's really
handled
good.
that incredibly. Um, but yeah, the way people were like, no, like bold of you to think we're just gonna go along with this, was great and I loved. But like that would have been on her watch, so to speak. And then things have been pretty quiet, and there was like we thought we were gonna have like the D&D like 1.0 or whatever, which like I was never gonna play because I'm like I all my books are 5e. I'm not buying new books. Like
Mhm.
you get me fucked up. Um, but so now they're just like redoing the basic like player's handbook and I think the DM's guide and like a monster manual or something. But like some of those rules that a friend of mine, my friend Bex, who is more into like crunchy mechanics and stuff, she has like read more about it than I have, truth be told. So like she's told me some things where I'm like, I'm not gonna play with that one. Like that doesn't seem great. Like how they're doing casting or that there'll be more restrictions on like which classes have access to which spells and things like that.
Interesting.
Uh yeah, like it's very strange. And I feel like it's an interesting time because like indie games and third party TTRPGs have had so much success and have been getting so much like well deserved and long overdue hype that the bigger games, like D&D and even like World of Darkness and stuff, which I think can feel more indie sometimes, but like they're definitely not. They're quite a big company. Like they do kind of have to come correct in a sense because they're not the only fish in the sea, so to speak.
Hmm.
Like they may be the biggest or maybe what people have the most experience or familiarity with, but that's starting to matter less and less, especially with like all of the content and the actual plays and streams you can watch people trying different games and people talking about different games and the fact that like most indie games are pretty accessible to like pick up and learn, and it's not like okay, I have to go through this like Old Testament length text like how to
Right.
play this game. um like yeah, it's a very, I mean, like, listen, this lady, she may have a million and one things going on in her personal life, and this may, I may be putting on my tinfoil hat for no reason. Um, but I don't. My gut instinct is that that is not what it is, and it's that we be it financially or whatever, especially for a manufacturing company like Hasbro. Because I was saying with like being in tech, like things move a lot faster there, but companies like big companies like that, things generally move slow as molasses in the dead of winter, right? Like they are
Yeah.
not known for quick turnarounds. And so to get rid of a C-suite level person after 2 years, that's no time. That's
Yeah.
nothing.
You really get the sense it's a rocky boat, and I think especially like, you know, Hasbro itself was down what 2 point, it was like 1.26 billion in quarter 4 of last year. uh
Yeah, it was
and
pretty
then
wild.
there were some significant Wizard of the Coast like layoffs both in the D&D and Magic departments. You know, you're talking about
Yeah.
like a, you know, their positions are being either cycled or you know, cut entirely, that are uh big positions, big creative positions. And so I cannot imagine I either like I imagine either this there's pressure from the top, like I get out of here, or it's like I don't want to be overseeing this disaster. Like this is just not, I don't
Pretty
want this to be
much.
my reputation, and I don't want to be the person who has to do this, right?
Like if I had to just make a guess using my own deductive reasoning and like experience in the corporate world and like what I think, looking into my little crystal ball of what I think happened. Like I think the OGL stuff shocked them very deeply and that blew up in their face. I think it was under this person's watch that like a third of the Hasbro, like I think like I believe like the Wizard staff and like the gate has or the Hasbro staff. I could be if I'm, don't quote me on this. Do your own
Mhm.
research. Don't just, I'm a person on the internet. Please don't
Yeah.
take what I say as gospel. Um, but it was under their watch like a third of those Hasbro employees were laid off, which is dramatic. Uh, and then
20%.
20%. Okay, so not still quite a lot. Uh, and hi brain, please work. Yeah, like the thing with like the D&D like 1.0 kind of fell through, and then um these new like source books, it kind of feels like they're trying to go around and like beat drums and drum up like excitement for that, and people are just kind of like okay, like we'll see it when it comes out, I guess. And also like all the AI like art conspiracy stuff, like
Yeah.
well, not it's not a conspiracy, it was a thing that happened, but I completely forgot about that to mention that, of like that book where it's like there's a T-Rex with like a human leg coming out of his torso, and I'm like, hey friend, how did we miss, like I work with design teams, like how did that get through the approval process? How did we miss that? Because it was like egregious. It was like people with 18 fingers, like it was not subtle. And that's such a bad look. And I think there was just too many strikes on that person's watch, and probably the people above her were like, all right, we need to staunch the bleeding. And it's kind of a cutting the head off the snake and seeing if that works, frankly, is like
Yeah.
what often ends up happening in this, which like sometimes, I mean, like a lot of the time that is what needs to be done, right? A lot of companies will like not cut the bad leader, um because they'll just lay off a bunch of other people and think that that fits the like the lower creative directors and like people who are doing the work. Like they'll let those people go, but they'll keep the bad leader, which doesn't make any sense. Which and I think is also like Wizards did that already and it didn't work. So they're like, oh, now I guess we have to just right from the top and see if just cutting this would be a problem. Like I don't know if she got fired, but it may a lot of times those things they're not really firing to that level. It's more of like a you're voluntold to leave.
Yeah, yeah,
So you can leave of your own accord and leave like nicely and civilly and the press releases can look good for everybody, or we can force you out and
yeah.
it'll look worse.
That makes sense. Very, very interesting. I'm curious to see what happens from here. I I feel like for the longest time I've assumed that like Wizards was kind of untouchable, and I'm kind of curious, like, you know, it as I
Yeah, I
said,
don't think
rocky
they
ship.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's just like it's a rocky ship and then people will go around and just like firing off shotgun rounds into the floor of it and then being like, why is there water here? Like that doesn't you can't keep doing that and it not have repercussions. So I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see who sort of steps into that role. And I mean, like, the smarter thing to do, right, would be something like bring in someone that actually has a certain level of like interest or care, like genuine commitment to these types of games like D&D and Wizards and like tabletop games in general, because they're going to just inherently be able to understand the perceived market better. But whether that will happen or not, obviously we don't know. Um so it'll be interesting. But yeah, it is a bit of like that gif of like an on fire dumpster floating down a flooded street. That's kind of where it's how it seemed things have been going over at Wizards lately. And by lately, I mean like the last few years.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we can hit the mail now. Uh,
Okay.
I'm gonna bring in Apocrypha the Mailbird. Phew.
The mailbird is everything. I would die for the mailbird.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. Okay, so we actually have some questions from last week. Let me see if any of these are. So some of these were kind of elaborations on ones previously in the emails. Let me just make sure they're like. Uh, hmm. I let me look at the other ones. Yeah. All of these are from Goblin, aka aka Skibbity Bop Dada, who's
Incredible.
who's a VIP question asker, famous beloved asker of questions. Um, we might as
Pour
well
one
just
out
go
for
through
Goblin.
them. I think what we'll do is we'll do. We should probably should get these. Yeah, we'll get through these older ones. I feel like you might have some thoughts on this. What are your opinions on system neutral adventures? Do you think they are holding themselves back due to the lack of control? Um,
Mm.
Interesting.
That's a fun question. I hmm. So I love the idea as someone who like has a propensity to end up homebrewing even when I think I'm going to play a module or run a module. I like the concept of like system agnostic stuff a lot because it gives the person running the game that flexibility to sort of just be like, here's some story scaffolding to get you started, because that's always the hardest part is like getting your kind of feet in the earth around like what's happening and your basic setting down. So if you can like look through that and have something to start with, I feel like it's a lot easier to just get to the table and start rolling whatever dice apply. Um like part of what we're about to launch our Patreon over on Table Talk, well
Hmm.
under Mythos Media, but for Table Talk primarily since that's what's live. And one of our benefits are going to be is me writing like system agnostic adventure hooks just to like get people started, like things I kind of wish I would have had when I was gearing up to DM of like, so but system agnostic, partly because I'm not a math girly and there's so many different cool games that I don't want to be like, no, you have to use this for D&D. So it's more of just like writer brain, let me dump some potential stories to get you started. Uh and then you're off to the races. So I like that a lot, but I do think it's more of a thing where I could see it being more cumbersome for like newer players, for newer GMs, or people who were just maybe either they enjoyed the crunchier aspects of games more, or they liked more, excuse me, mechanic heavy systems. Like, yeah, not having that source of truth could be kind of tricky, but like I think it's cool, and I like some system agnostic stuff.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I think there's a a real potential for like, I think when you have a system agnostic thing, you have a potential to really like explore what makes the thing that you're playing with, like, or the game that you're playing specifically, like, interesting and unique. And I
Mhm.
yeah, I would definitely agree that it's a neat thing to play around with. Um, this is kind of a fun follow up question to that. Is the idea of system limiting? Are we too attached to the idea of TTRPGs as full commercial products to embrace incomplete works? Do you think a more fluid understanding of system and supplement could help widen the possibilities of this medium? That's really interesting.
Mm. That is
I
an interesting question.
mm-hmm.
I I will speak for myself. I because I definitely have always approached TTRPGs as like, oh, this is meant to be a very personal, like customized experience. I've never felt to or I not never, but I don't often feel in like games that I run overly restricted by any kind of mechanics because frankly, if I don't want to use a mechanic, I'm just not going to use it, right? And I don't feel any kind of way about that. I don't feel like it's just because something is written in the book that it necessarily has to be done that way. Like I've always even like my first D&D campaign that I ever played in, like we had a lot of like homebrew rules. We like the DM didn't like touch only spellcasting or touch only spellcasting, touch only healing. So like all of our healing was AoE and like things like that. So I think my experience with it has always been so it's very apparent of like, oh, you can kind of just do whatever you want, and like the system is just a place to get you started, so you don't have to sit there and like figure out do your own game design, which takes time and is a whole job that a lot of people do and are amazing at. Um, like I think there's a bit like I remember talking to a friend we met through the podcast about like she had a character she wanted to run in a VTM campaign, but she had a very like specific concept already for who this character was and like what she wanted the story to be, and it really wouldn't work with how the VTM lore and the World of Darkness lore for like how kindred work and how that society is. Like this character, I was like, she's gonna last a session, bless her. If you're attached to this girl, I was like, the second someone finds out that like you are kindred and you live with your brother who's still mortal and he knows you're a vampire, it was like you're going, but all of y'all are gonna get murked. Um, and so like VTM maybe wasn't the right. She either had to be kind of cool with that, or VTM might have not been the right vehicle for that story. She may have needed a different game or needed to just do that in OSRP or write it as a novel or something. So it's like, I think there's just like there's a game for everyone, I think there's a system for everyone. You just have to be, and for every kind of story you want to tell, you just have to be open and willing to look around and try things. And also
Yeah,
not be afraid to change what you don't like.
I would agree. I also think like, I think there's an angle of this question that's about like art versus product, and I do think like
Mm-hmm.
um I think that hmm, mhm. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of space to embrace incomplete works, um and widen the possibilities of the medium. I don't necessarily know if it's uh hmm. I don't necessarily know if it begins from the angle of like system and supplement, but I do think there's like there's a place for that. I have to like think about this question a bit more. I might need to like do some off stream reflection on this because it's really interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a deeper one. You could like go like I gave my initial answer, but you could definitely get in the weeds on this one. It's a
yeah,
very especially like the whole art v product example is like very, very interesting. And also not something I skirted that part of it because I was like, I do not have my statement for that ready just off the dome
yeah.
because that is a very interesting and complicated question.
I guess if I had to like kind of give a general answer to this, I think that like I am very interested in RPGs that distribute themselves and are created in ways that are not necessarily the traditional Kickstarter or crowdfunder like method. And
Mm,
so I think that that's I think that that's kind of where the realm of like less like industrialized or less like commercial systems might exist. But yeah, it's an interesting thought. Um, Another question from Goblin. We have a lot of this is 100% all questions from Goblin, so I won't clarify that for each one.
Goblin puts this segment on their back and carries it home, and
Yeah,
we love them for
these are the
that.
questions from Goblin from last time. There's more for
Incredible.
this for this time. There's five more for
Incredible.
this time. Uh, I feel like this is kind of two questions, although I maybe it's I'll ask it as one. I think it's
For it.
interesting. Um, Actually, let me make sure. Are you okay with discussing this? Because I realize that this is kind of my wheelhouse, but it might not be an area that you're okay with talking about. I've sent you the
Oh yeah,
question.
I'm down to talk about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I
So
was in a horror kink campaign before, so yeah, I'm down to talk about
hell
roleplay, but
yeah.
thank you for asking.
What do you think could be learned from unstructured roleplay? What do you think erotic roleplay could
Ooh.
contribute to TRPGs? I feel like I'm getting the connection here. I think like you're saying
Yes.
like kind of impromptu almost. Yeah, that's really
So
interesting.
I have a lot of opinions on this. I am a big like our the first episode we ever did of Table Talk was discussing lines and veils and the importance of them.
Hmm.
Because the campaign we came from before was a Ravenloft like horror kink campaign where we did not have a lines and veil. Like we had a lines and veils discussion with the DM knew what each of us kind of was and wasn't comfortable with, but we did not know that with each other. And in retrospect, I it was only in retrospect that I realized how irresponsible that was.
Hmm.
Because especially in general, but especially in the framework of like what that campaign was and what it was going to evolve into. It's like that was not a good setup. So I think un when you say unstructured role play, I think I would want to contextualize that a little bit about do you mean more just like leaning into very yes and D improving and seeing just letting that drive the story? Is that what we mean by unstructured role play?
I'm not sure. I the vibe that I got, yeah, I guess so. Like more, I guess, yeah, more open like free play type stuff.
I like it a lot. That's my whole bread and butter with my VTM campaign of like I have some general ideas and I have like my big plot points and big like, ideas of things that they're going to run into or different I know how certain NPCs are going to conflict with each other, but like I genuinely have no idea what my players are going to do and we will find that out together in the moment. And that's why I don't plan.
Hmm.
So I love the freedom that kind of comes with that. I think maybe just as someone who is deeply clinically anxious, there is like a degree of there's a little bit healing in a way when it's like you're role playing with people you're very comfortable with, and you're like, okay, I can just let go and I don't have to try to control this, and it will be such a better experience for that. Like that is a as a side thing just for me as a person, I think very good practice and a nice kind of validating healing situation to be in.
Yeah.
Um And then like the erotic role play side of it is interesting. I think it's something where like in my personal experience, that's always been I've not done a ton like we have a mix of players at our table where some people are more fade to black and some people are cool to just like go whole hog if that's the vibe. Um, I've done a lot more of like erotic role play over like text. So not necessarily like at the table.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there's like a point because I know like some of my players are more fade to black where it's like it'll go up to a point and then we're like, all right, we'll make some inferences. Or I will write fan fiction for my like players or for like my character in other campaigns about like this spicy scene that happened. If I was like, I will write the fan fiction and send it to you and we can experience it that way. Um, but I think if everybody is down for it and comfortable with it, and obviously like when you bring in erotic role play, like just like when you bring in like horror and other things that can get a bit more touchy, there's always another like deeper level of conversations that you have to have around consent and setting up safe words and setting up like verbal and nonverbal signals of like, hey, we use like a stoplight system for whether we're comfortable or if we're doing check-ins, but we also have like a timeout or a peace sign, or you like rub your nose, or whatever you need to have multiple avenues for people to like vocalize that they're getting a little uncomfy or that they would like to move the scene along just for safety. And also have to you have to feel really comfortable expressing that discomfort if it ever comes up, because a lot of the time, like in my experience with things like that, like more intense role play, when more things are on the table, like sometimes like things will come up and be a little bit triggering that you didn't even know were going to be triggering. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like maybe we had a lines and veils conversation and I said, certain things that I knew would be an issue for me, but something else came up that I'd never quite encountered in this framework. And I'm like, ooh, that feels bad in a way. And like, you can't, it's so easy to fall into like, well, I'm afraid to ruin everyone's fun. And so I don't want to stop it and say anything. So I'll just sit and I'll grin and bear it and be uncomfortable. And it's like, you can't do that. You have to be okay and in a group where you feel comfortable safe wording out or throwing the signal or whatever, and know that there's not going to be any kind of like weird social repercussion for that. That like everyone wants everyone to be comfortable and be having fun, and the second it's not, let's move on.
Yeah, I've been sitting here deviously, hand steepled the entire time because I these days I almost like most of the games that I play are King Teach RPGs with Fade to Black, um, and
Mm-hmm.
so like that is a big thing for me that I think is important. I write King Teach RPGs. I'm writing Sapphic World, and I had Biotrification,
Oh,
and I'm out here making stuff in this vein and play testing stuff in
I
this
would
vein and playing stuff in this vein.
I would like links if you have links
Oh,
to share.
absolutely. Hang on. Let me here, I will simply give you here, I'll give you the ashcan, and I'm also just going to give you the document the documents, apologies.
Oh,
Um but yeah,
not giving them.
I really like unplanned, unprepared games. I think that's really fun. Um that's kind of where that's also my GMing wheelhouse. I very much agree with Mariah there. And I am also, as I said, like a big proponent of kink and teacher RPGs, and also I think specifically like as you definitely like mentioned, Mariah, like there is a lot of overlap between like what is safe in a teacher RPG and what is safe in erotic roleplay, or even what's safe in an actual kink scene.
Yes,
Like
they're
those
very
tools are the same.
similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like being, it is like there's the joke of like the kink community and like the TTRPG community, that Venn diagram is a circle. And like it's not exclusively true, but it's like there is a lot of crossover, and it's always interesting when you get into those conversations because like I fall into it's a great framework to talk about things like consent and safety and everything because it's quite established in that like IRL spicy situation.
Mhm.
But yeah, like it's you got to do it. Like you have to handle that responsibly, and I think having been in situations with both where it's been handled really well and situations where it hasn't been handled as responsibly, um I've seen both sides of it, and it's just illustrated even more than I already like obviously knew the importance of like of the safety and the consent side of it. Because it's so much fun when it's done right, but it's rough when you feel back into a corner.
Yeah, I yeah, I definitely agree. I so yeah, I hope we answered your question well. Next question. How should one go about adapting a piece of media that they like into a TTRPG? How does one manipulate rules and dice rolls contribute to the emulation of a different medium? That's an interesting one. I have
Oh, goodness.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um
you're the game designer. Do you want to take that one
yeah, I can take
first?
that one. So my immediate thought process is like I've seen a lot of mismatches in the past, and so that would be my first warning is like be really cautious about not mismatching your dice system or whatever sort of mechanic you're using to what you're trying to do because like the dice and mechanics they have an effect on the sort of stories that are able to be told and like the the general play space I feel um and so I would recommend like first I mean this is kind of generally my like approach and philosophy with game design. First see like hey, is there a structure, is there a game structure out there that like or like an overarching system, a powered by the apocalypse or forged in the dark or heart the city
Mm-hmm.
beneath belonging outside belonging that I can use to build up this game. And if there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing out there that well actually first when you're looking at that, don't be like, this is the one that I know and I'm going to use this. Say, look at
Mm-hmm.
what questions are these mechanics asking. Like PBTA is generally asking like a central question that like the dice kind of answer, uh, uh, and then the stats usually answer as well. So you're not going to have like I'm trying to think of a thing that wouldn't fit well in PBTA. I think like you would be hard pressed to make a very compelling like you're cooking. You'd be hard pressed to make a very nice a very like quality like cozy low stakes cooking and farming game
Yeah.
in PBTA,
Yeah.
but you might be able to do that in Blowing Outside Belonging because you have, you might be able to focus more on character elements using that because Blowing Outside Belonging has your tokens that are more about like the personality traits of your character. Um, and then if none of those things work, I would basically do the same thing. Any sort of system that you imagine for your game, ask the question to yourself as you're making it. Uh, what questions are being asked here? What questions are being answered here by the system? Um, and and then try and adapt the things that you really like. Try and adapt in ways that are not just taking um, just taking the things that you like and spitting them back out. Try and actually adapt and like rework things and put your own creative spin on things and mash things together in weird ways. I love when it's like, oh yeah, I can see how that this person came up with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's really fun. Yeah, that would kind of be my general philosophy for making kind of a game that's very like pastiche driven.
Yeah, I love that answer. I think it articulated a lot of what was very scattered in my brain that I could not put words to. But yeah, the bit you said about like asking or like looking at what questions the system is trying to answer.
Mhm.
I love that. That's such a like compelling way to think about the way game like the underneath like guts of the game and like what it's driving toward, and that clicked in my brain immediately where I was like, oh, I never quite thought of it like that. but that is what we're doing, and
Yeah.
it makes it so easy to like differentiate systems and be like, oh, this would be a good fit for this story versus this would be a better fit for that.
Hell yeah.
That's
Well, thank you.
a really nice way of putting it, I think.
Yeah. Uh. Yeah. That's basically pretty much my thoughts on that. Um. And then we have the questions from today, which we probably won't get through all of. We'll get through one or two. Um.
Heck yeah.
Let me see what here is the most interesting for us, because I might be picky here. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Uh, oh, that's a good one. I like that one. Um, I think these are great. Yeah, we're gonna go with question 3 and question 4, because I think that they fit well together, and I think that there are things that you'll have like thoughts on. Um, so, the first question
Mm.
is, what do you think makes a TTRPG suitable for longer play?
Ooh, well, this one's gonna be obviously my personal answer. If it leans more story centric and character and like role play driven, that's when I've really got my long traveling boots on. Versus when it's like very crunchy and there's a lot of like the classic is like how D&D like fighting like battle mechanics, it
Hmm.
can like combat, that was the word that was just escaping me. Like fighting game more, just combat, Mariah. uh how combat can kind of drag sometimes, especially when you're at like bigger tables of like 5 and 6 people. And like it's fun, but it's like I burn through my energy doing that a lot faster versus like when it's story centric. I feel like I can go and go and go until I just run out of content in my brain and like I guess we're done now because I don't have anything else to take you through. So yeah, definitely for me personally, the more RP centric it leans, the more like theatrical it is, the longer I can go.
Yeah, I would also add. I think indie TTRPG developers especially have a like have an anxiety about putting too many like little advancements in their game. And if I
Mhm.
look at your game and I'm like, there is enough for the players to be like advancing their characters and changing their characters in interesting ways for
Yeah.
a long time, I'm more likely to want to run that or play that. Because I like when the mechanics are saying this character has changed in this way. I think that's really really fun.
Oh, yeah. I just actually interpreted this question a different way because I was thinking longer
Fair.
play, like the amount of time per
Oh.
session, but not over a breadth of time. But one thing I really love when TTRPGs do is they'll have like additional optional mechanics that you can add in later. Like VTM does that in a way that I really like,
Hmm.
where there's a way to play it that's a little more mechanics light, and then like as you play more, there's like enhanced combat rules and different like more specific things for certain situations. So like as you grow and get more comfortable with the system, as your players get more comfortable with the system, you can throw in some fresh stuff. And I really like that. And I really like the flexibility and like that just more customization opportunities in a game. And I feel like that gives it a lot more like replayability and keeps it fresh for longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Next is, what length do you find most preferable for TTRPG campaigns, including one-shots? What do you like designing for most? Oh, like in terms of campaign. Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Campaign length.
Like one shot, two shots, or like longer campaigns and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Because I am such a hoe for story, definitely like in those, I like a longer campaigns just because it gives me more room to run and more threads to pull, and I can, as the characters develop, I can sort of customize, and really I like to get into the nitty-gritty character development stuff that you really can only do over a breadth of time. Um but then I do one shots are fun, but I really also love like a mini campaign. I think that can be really
Hmm.
cool, especially if you're like trying out a new system that you're not quite sure about because sometimes with a one shot it's always like the first time you play anything. It's like the first day of school and you're getting the class with new kids. Like even if you're playing with your friends, or like it's a bit clunky and like we haven't really hit our stride yet. But when you get like a 2 to 4 session like mini campaign, you have a chance to like really get to know the system and getting your characters and play around in the world a little bit without like if you don't want the whole commitment of running, excuse me, like a never ending or ambiguously ending date campaign.
Yeah.
I love a like 2 to 4 session mini campaign.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of I would say like 6 to 10 sessions. That's kind of where I like to be.
Yeah.
11 to 12 if I'm feeling spicy. But
Feeling froggy.
yeah. And then a one shot, like ideally like 3 to 4 hours. That's kind of where I want to be with that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, but some, I do agree. Like sometimes I'll play like a 2 to 4. Like that's definitely. Sometimes I'll be like, all right, we're doing 25 sessions. We're in it. We're
Yeah.
doing 32 sessions. Like
This is a season of TV. Yeah,
yeah,
I've not set like a session length for my game. It's just like we'll go till we can't no more. And
yeah.
like it'll probably, I mean, hopefully like at some point I want to start running side like little mini campaigns in one shot to like flesh out the world a little bit, but I think when we can play more regularly than like once a month and we all live in the same city, maybe I'll get a better idea of like the scope for what we're doing, but right now I'm really just staring into the void and the void is staring back.
Hell yeah. Um. Okay. Well, I think that's all of our. I mean, there are more questions, but I think I'm gonna save them for next week. Just because I'd like to get a little bit of downtime before my next thing.
Fair.
um, but thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you coming on, and it was really nice getting to meet you. Um,
Thank you so much for having me. It was nice to meet you too. This was so much fun.
Hell yeah. I would love to. Where can folks find you? Are there any spots where if you want to send me links, I can put them in the Twitch chat, and folks can
Absolutely.
um
I can let me pull up our little link tree. That's the easiest um way to go. And then I'll do my little marketing spiel when I'm not typing.
hell yeah. Oh yeah, sorry I missed that goblin. I'll let me. Oh god,
Wait,
Twitch is
wait,
being
I
weird.
messed it up.
Uh
I use a MacBook. No brain. Why? I use a MacBook at work, and my personal computer's a PC, so I'm
oh
always
yeah.
pushing the wrong buttons to copy and paste.
I will put this question in my notes for next week, goblins. Next week is Ira Prince from the 7 part packed AP and also interstitial 2e art and Eyes on the Prize and a bunch of other really wonderful things.
Oh, very fun.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for that.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Mariah. I am one half of the Table Talk RPG or the Table Talk podcast. We are you well, we can find us basically anywhere you consume podcast. We are there. So Spotify, Apple, those are the two main ones that I use. There's so many more, but like previously said, I'm really bad at listing things, but we're on
It's
all the
okay.
major platforms. Google Podcasts is another one. There we go. It's just if it's three, it's a list. That counts. And then as far as socials, you can find us on everywhere at Table Talk RPG. And I shared the link tree, which should have access to everything there. We're on Threads and Instagram and uh oh my god, TikTok. Brain. We're on
Yeah.
TikTok for we're gonna ride that ship out till the end. Maybe something crazy will happen. We'll get to keep it. Um
Something
and
amazing will happen.
then yeah. My personal handles are just my name, Mariah_Gresham. I'm a writer. I'm a ceramics artist on the side and I paint a little bit. I need to start posting some of that stuff that I make. And then I'm also about to start take like gearing up the handles for our Mythos Media productions. So be on the lookout for that too. And that'll have all the the interesting writing content of the process of me going through the analysis paralysis of trying to write a horror podcast and writing a mystery and trying to make sure it's mysterious enough.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you all for watching, and we're going to raid out to my old friend Diesel, who
Heck
is
yeah.
streaming, I believe, playing some amateur Sonic fan games, which seem neat. So
Ooh,
go take a look at that,
fun.
and yeah, take care, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. Bye. Oh, that didn't go.
Remember, if you don't like what you see, you can change it. It's up to you, really. Goodbye, good luck, and have fun!